right. With that, we'll get kicked off here this morning. So, good morning, everybody. My name is Sean Huber. I'm one of the automation managers here at Rumsey. Thank you for joining us today for Rumsey's ongoing webinar series hosted by Rumsey Product Specialist. So, with that, I will turn it over to you, Mike, and let you go through what you need for a successful PowerFlex component drive upgrade.
Thanks, Sean. Hey, everybody. How you doing today? Welcome to our ongoing webinar series. This one is going to be dealing with, what do you need to know for a successful, PowerFlex 44 or 40 component drive migration. I'll give you a little bit about myself. My name is Mike Moore. I'm a drive specialist with Rumsey. I've been here a little less than a year, but I do have 35 years in the electrical field. Every time I look at that number, I just cannot. Started my electrical career in the Navy as a nuclear electrician on a submarine. I am an avid scuba diver. Got 300 plus dives under my belt. But Sean did mention our webinar series that we had. We had our locked-in series before this one, and some of these items that you see listed here are the VFD webinar series that we've given. There are others, but these are just having to do with our VFDs and such. So if you want to check those out, they're very informative, and they're there for you on YouTube. Sean also mentioned that there's going to be some, and this is a list of a lot of the documents that were used and referenced in doing this this webinar, and you'll get a copy of this so that you can go to Rockwell Automation and download those documents if you need them. What are we going to go over today? Well, we're going to go over how to migrate from an older PowerFlex 440, and I'll let you know that there are going to be some others that are going to be included in here because the 4 was designed to upgrade an older model. And now that we're upgrading the 4, there is a means to upgrade that older model, and we'll get into that in a bit. Well, what are the considerations to do a drive upgrade? I'm going to go into the drive families, the older drives and the newer drives. Now, what are some of the mechanical differences that you have to look at when you're doing this upgrade? Going from an older drive to a newer drive, modernization is it's going to be a big thing that you're probably going to hear from Rockwell a lot. And part of going into the 5 series drives, going on this one, and the 750 drives for our architecture series drive, it's going to be one of the things that we're going to be going over moving forward. And after I go through all the items that you have to look at, we're going to get into a little bit of what you got to do for VFD startup. Why are we given this presentation, and why is it important? Well, as of June of this year, we were notified that a lot of the older, smaller drives that we have are going to be going into, end of life obsolescence, and that's going to start happening in fiscal year 23. So, we're in fiscal year 20, are already in August, heading into September. But we are going to, as of fiscal year 23, the PowerFlex 4 and the PowerFlex 40 and 40P are no longer going to be available, except for whatever we have on the shelf at that time. And then as of fiscal year 25, you can no longer get them unless you get them by other means. But this is why we want to go over this now, because our 523 and 525 series are going to be around for a long time. And we want to make sure that everybody knows what they need and has the information that they need to ensure that they have a lack of downtime. But you can see down here, I hope this is easy to see. This will give us our matrix of what this is showing you. And you're showing, the darkish green is going to be our active, this is our active lineup, and you can see that our 4M is going to stay, our 523, our 525, and 527. I'm not going to be getting much into the 527 because that is a special drive that has other needs that it's going to be a lot more difficult to do a very simple upgrade. But I'll be focusing on the 523 and the 525. You know, active mature, that's the lighter green that you can see here. Essentially, what is going on with active mature is Allen Bradley doesn't do anything with that. You know, they make it, they sell it, but they're not going to make any upgrades to it. They're not going to do any changes to it. Now, then you get to end of life, and end of life is in yellow. And you can see that the PowerFlex 4, 40, and 40P are going to be, you know, at the end of life as of the beginning of fiscal year 23. And the PowerFlex 400 is going to be at the end of life in fiscal year 24. And the red is discontinued. That is when we will no longer supply the product. We will still have some support, but we will no longer supply it. So you will no longer be able to buy one as of fiscal year 25 for the 4 and 40 and 40P, and fiscal year 26 for the 400. What are the items that you have to do to consider to do a drive replacement? One, you have to review your application. We're trying to move forward to a new style drive that has a lot more features and such. You know, is your application, is it just going to be a clean replacement? You know, you have a fan, or you have a conveyor, you just want to replace it, or do you want to do some other things to it? And then you want to review your installation, how you're going to do it. You know, is it going to be are you going to put it in a process control box? Are you just going to hang it on the wall? These are some of the things that you want to look at. You know, with the new 523 and 525 drives, it has more capabilities than the older PowerFlex 4 series drives. And that's one of the things that you really have to look at and have to get into. And hopefully they'll answer a lot of your questions when we go into the drive stats. Now, and a lot of the features that we have on the new drives are, you know, they have modern features. You know, we have communications that are built in. We have safety features that are built in. And, you know, do you want to migrate to a PowerFlex 5 series or 520 series, or do you just want to replace what you have because it's going to be pop in, pop out? Just going through some of the considerations, you know, so you are going to upgrade from a PowerFlex 4 series to a 520 series. You know, do you have enough footprint for a new drive? I can guarantee you, yes, you do. Doesn't matter which ones you're going to replace it with. A light drive to a light drive and a 520 series, you're definitely going to have enough room. Are you going to upgrade your motor? Probably not, but it may be something that you have to wonder about, because if you have an older non-VFD rated motor that could be giving you some problems, or it has given you some problems, something you want to take a look at. But for this, we're not going to upgrade that. Do you have proper ground? Considerations for this are that, yes, you do have proper grounds. You had a drive that was installed and it was operating and it failed for reasons that are unknown to you. Do you have proper cabling? I'm also going to consider that a yes, because it was operating a motor at that time. But these are the items that you may not have had before that you have to consider now. Are you going to add network connectivity? Because, you know, the 523, even though it's a pretty basic drive, the 525 has built-in Ethernet capability, so you have to do absolutely nothing other than plug in a cable to it. Now, are you going to add a safety network to it? This is becoming another large item with personnel safety and with drives, and the 525 has a built-in safety terminals that you can use and help yourselves keep your people safe. Going to get into the drives a little bit. This is the 4M. We're not going to get into the 4M a whole lot. Just going to show you what it is. This is it's the smallest drive that we have. It's going to be around for a little while. And if you need just a simple drive that has both, you know, volt source control and slip compensation, this is one to get. But if you're going to, you know, replace it, there are means to replace it with a new 520 series, and we'll get into those in a bit. The ones that we're talking about here are the AC, or the PowerFlex 4, which is this was a replacement drive for our old 160 drive, and now it's getting, it's getting aged, and we have our new 520 series out. It's been out for a few years, and they're basically indestructible. But we're going to get into a lot of what's going on. But this drive it's an older model, but it's very limited. It only goes up to 5 horsepower. So if you have to increase your the horsepower of your motor for anything, and you go by 5 horsepower, this is a very small drive and very limited. PowerFlex 40. It's a big brother to the PowerFlex 4. It is the first one that we have that's got vector control in this series of drives. It goes up to 15 horsepower, so it's a little bit larger, and it's just a larger, more bulky drive to use than the 4, but it's a great drive. 40P is essentially a 40 that has been upgraded with some process controls, and also you can add our save torque off feature to it with an optional card. You can see this one also is only good up to 15 horsepower. And this little slide will probably be good for everybody when they get this. This gives you all of the compact component drives in one space, so you can see what they all look like and how they all compare. And you can see that from the PowerFlex 4M over to the 400. Our 400 is that's one of our bread and butter drives that goes up to 350 horsepower. But we're here I'm only going to be focusing on drive from the 40 down to the 4. Really the 4 here are smaller drives that you need to worry about and to get you guys upgraded. What are the mechanical differences of these drives? The PowerFlex 4 and the 520 series, it's very close. It is almost exactly the same size, almost has the exact same footprint, but the PowerFlex 5 series is just a little bit smaller. The only footprint that you really have to worry about is depth, as the PowerFlex 520 series is a little bit taller. Unfortunately, to get all the features that we had to get into the 520 series drive, they did not want to make it wider, but they did have to make it deeper. So when you're thinking about this, the reason that they created the 520 series drive is to take the place of the PowerFlex 4 drive. And they wanted to make sure that it fit in the exact same hole that the PowerFlex 4 fits in. And the 40, the PowerFlex 525 is the direct replacement for the 40, but I should take that back. It's not a direct replacement, but it's a similar replacement. You can see that the PowerFlex 40 in a frame A is a little bit wider. It's about 1 inch wider, and it is about 1.5 inches taller, maybe 1 inch taller. So it's quite a bit smaller. It has the same issue with the it's a physically deeper drive than the 40, but depth usually is not an issue when it comes to replacement. It's usually the footprint, and the 525 is a pretty good match to make everything work out. One of the items that people do have is when they put these in a control cabinet, they use DIN mounting on the smaller drives. And in the 4 and the 40, they're DIN mountable up to a frame B. And the 525 series is DIN mountable up to a frame C. So what you get with a 525, if you're going to be replacing these, it's on a DIN mount. It is a matter of undoing your cables, unplugging it from the DIN rail, putting the new one on, and plugging your cables back in. It's a very simple upgrade. And the 525 has 0 stacking, and 0 stacking means you can put them right next to each other. And while the PowerFlex 4 has 0 stacking also, it limits the amount of temperature rise that drive has. But with the 525 0 stacking, you can put this in a 50 degree C environment, and it'll operate with no problem. And then if you if it's in a warmer environment or you're worried about it being, exceeding that 50-degree C rating, you can put a fan on it and it'll take that rating up to 70 degrees C. Not that we want you to put it in a 70-degree C temperature area, but it will help you if you have a problem with the PowerFlex 440.
Mike, there's one comment I'll just throw in there, and I think you might be relating it a little bit here. But we have had some issues, and maybe some users out there that have had to live with the 40s and the 4s. If you don't have some of the cooling, that was what was some of the short issues with their lifespan. So if you had the DIN rail and stuff too close to, or to the wireway too close to it, it didn't cool well. And so by upgrading to the 520 series, you might be able to buy yourself a little bit of temperature and a longer life to a drive or a product in your drive cabinet. So it could also benefit you long term, both from a maintenance as well as just getting information out of them to start planning the upgrade sooner than later, even though the 4s and 40s will be around for a few more years.
Well, thanks, Sean. And when it comes to when you're mounting, this shows your clearances and orientations and such. One of the items that you do get, one of the betterments that you do get with putting a 520 series in lieu of a 4 or a 40 is the clearance above and below the older drives is a lot greater. It's almost double what it is for a 5. And a lot of times what we've seen is people will have these drives in a cabinet and they'll have 10 of them. And then to wire everything in, you want to maintain a cabinet that's as small as you can. So you want to maximize your wall space. So you try to make your enclosure as small as possible. And a lot of times what they'll do is they'll put wireways on top of the drive. And when they talk about clearance, that includes wireways and such. And with the 525 drive, it being not only thinner and shorter, it also doesn't need as much clearance top and bottom as the PowerFlex 4. So if you have 4 inches on each side of a 4 and they put a 520 series inside it, you're increasing the amount of available cooling space for that 520 series. And a lot of our customers, when they have done the upgrade, they can't believe how much better the performance is, just because the drive isn't essentially choked because it doesn't have enough airflow for it. When it comes to drive migration of our Bulletin 160 drive, this is the drive that I was talking to you about. That the 4 was to replace the 160, and the 4 it's a feed-through design on the 4 because the 160 was a feed-through design. And what Rockwell has done is they have created an adapter plate to maintain this feed-through design. So what they have done is they have this feed-through connector that you bolt on the 520 to it, and the adapter plate will bolt right into where a 160 is bolted into now, and you can be on your way. It's a very simple, very easy means to upgrade a 160 to a 520 series that will give you very minimal downtime, and you won't have to rewire the entire board. The other item to consider is if you have a remote HIM for a PowerFlex 4 or 40 and you go to upgrade a 520 series, the HIM is usable for that unit. So you don't have to replace your remotely located HIM. All you got to do is remove your 4, remove the plug for the HIM, plug the new HIM in, and you can continue on your way. It's compatible with the new drive. And this is one of the items that, this kind of encompasses everything that I've just discussed, with the exception of this PowerFlex 520 series adapter plate. This is supposed to be out sometime soon. We don't know when it's going to be out. We were told it was going to be out in August, but we are quickly approaching the end of August, and we haven't heard anything about when this is going to be out, but it should be out relatively soon. And with this foot plate adapter kit for the 520, it's going to be a snap to replace this drive from a PowerFlex 440. It's going to be just like the adapter plate in the last one. You take the drive off, you put this adapter plate on, screw it on, and the PowerFlex 5 will go right on the adapter plate. But then we're going to get into some of the items that you have to worry about when you're replacing a drive. A lot of questions that I get recently are, hey, I need a drive that's going to give me 100% torque, from startup. And unfortunately, a PowerFlex 4 cannot do that because it is a volt-hertz motor control only. So its best operation window is something more than 15 hertz up until full load. But with a centralist vector control motor or controlling VFD, that puts you up into the 40. And fortunately for us, when Alan Bradley decided to come up with the 520 series, they have both of them. So if you have a motor that you don't need great torque right off the bat, you can use volt-hertz control. But if you do need that control of current down low, you can keep it on centralist vector. And centralist vector is the default operating control for both the 523 and the 525. But the 523, it's a great unit. It's essentially a direct replacement for the 4. But we have found that a lot of folks, once we give them the 525 specifications, and you'll see here in a bit, and it's got built-in Ethernet, so you don't have to add an additional card. And it also has built-in safety, which it's a game changer when it comes to its expandability of your process. In the midst of doing these upgrades, there are some limits to the 520 series over the 4 or the 40. The 520 series does not have a flange mount version of it. The PowerFlex 4, you can get it in the NEMA 1, you can get it flange mount. You can also get the 40 in a NEMA 1. You can also get that in a 4X and also a flange mount. Unfortunately, the PowerFlex 520 series is available in NEMA 1 only, and flange mount you cannot get. If you need something more than NEMA 1, you'd have to get the 520 series as a packaged option, which we can do. But this is the portfolio of migration. You can see, and I have the Bulletin 160 included in here. That is now a direct migration path to a 525 or a 527. Now, if you have a PowerFlex 40 or 40P, you go to a 525. You have a PowerFlex 4, you can go to a PowerFlex 523. And currently, the PowerFlex 4M, it is only migrated with another PowerFlex 4M. You can replace it with a 520 series, but the migration path from Alan Bradley is currently to use the 4M and replace it with the 4M. We're going to get into a little bit of our 520 series drives. This is the latest that we have for our new component series drives. It has more features than the old drives. It has simplified configuration, setting them up as a snap. It also, and they are looking at, and we'll get into a price in a little bit. But right now, they're cheaper than the old one because it's the new drive, and the other drives are they've been around a while, but the pricing on them has not changed. So with the modernization and modularization of the new 520 series drive, it's a lot easier to manufacture, so it's a lot cheaper to take it to market for less money. This is the 523. It's just a great drive. You just want a standalone drive, just one drive, controlling your fan, your pump, anything that you need. It's great for that. Very small footprint. You can actually connect the drive. Have your maintenance electricians physically connect the drive. Then you can have your control electrician program the drive separately. It comes apart, so you can do that. These are the basic ratings of the drive, and the biggest item with these ones is the 520 series goes above 30 horsepower, or it goes up to 30 horsepower, where the other drives max out at 15. So you have quite a bit more expandability with these. 520 series drive, the 523 series drives has our embedded DSI, which that's the port that you would use if you're going to be doing startup or configuration of the drive with component software. You can see it also has built-in input and outputs. You can attach a 7-digit for braking. It meets a number of global standards, which you can see there. 525 series drive is added upon the 523. As an embedded port for Ethernet. It's got SafePort off, which are right behind that. Roof and cover. It's got the same easy to configure tools using component software as the 523, and it also can operate in a permanent magnetic motors if that's what you. Another thing that you get with the 520 series over the 523 is you get the embedded DSI, but you also get Ethernet IP as an option, and it is already embedded into the drive. You don't have to worry about adding a card. All you need to do is plug in and you're good to go. Now, if you want to use this in a ring system where you have a whole bunch of them connected together, you do have to get the expander card, but it does have Ethernet IP ready to use, and it's also got SIL2 safety that is also built into it. And what you get with the 525 series is in the 523 you only had input and output for one. This one you have inputs, analog inputs. You have two digital outputs. You got two analog outputs. You got one, and then you got two relays with the 525. When it comes to the 520 series, connecting it to our connected component software, Workbench software, which is a free download. It's very simple to do any configuration, to get any information you need out of the drive. And one of the other items that you have with our 520 series is automatic device configuration. So have a 523, 525, that something has happened and you need to replace that drive. If you have it connected to a Allen Bradley PLC and you have automatic device configuration for that drive, all you got to do is disconnect the drive, reconnect the new drive, and the PLC will do the work for you. You don't even have to restart it. One of the items that you do have to think about is ADC is only available on version 20 and above. It shouldn't really be an issue now because we're above version 20 on anything that we sell now. 525 series, you can see the little picture down there where it has the little red terminal block connector. That is the safety circuit for the 525 series, and it is a SIL2. It does require use of a safety relay input to it. Now the 527 series, I'm not going to really get into that much, but it has a different sort of safety circuit that, while the 525 only meets, SIL2, PowerFlex 527 meets SIL3. So that will help you with your safety circuitry if you choose that option.
Yeah, Mike, and I can just add in there real quick.
Sure.
The 527 is if you're using a Logix controller, so you have a control Logix or compact Logix out there, and in a lot of cases you may be doing SIP motion, so you have servo controlled over Ethernet. The 527 is a real good option to look at there because you're already doing some type of positioning moves with the servos. You're already talking Ethernet to those through the controller. 527 can give you the higher safety rating and can give you some servo-like performance in certain instances, can give you feed-through design on the Ethernet. So there's a couple of advantages to maybe looking that direction, but they'd be very specific and just something you would want to talk over with either the drive or motion specialist for your particular application. But there could be cases where you have 40s now, and the 527 might be a better solution.
Thanks, Sean. And regarding some of our safety solutions, our 523, you can use the 523 in a safety solution, but you have to use that much like you would use a contactor. You have to have the two output relays before you get to the motor, disconnect the drive from that motor for the safety circuit. With the 525, you can take these relays out because the relays that are inside the 525 turn off the output IGBTs. So that's a lot of wiring that you can rid yourself of. Less wires and less breakage. Less breakage is good. And then with the 527, you can see that it's a very simplified circuitry, but it's quite a bit more adept at what it does. And as Sean said, if you talk to somebody about upgrading to a 527, you can talk to our folks over there. I talked earlier about pricing. I'm going to keep this one here for a minute or two so you guys can check this out on our pricing. What I've done is I've broken out some list pricing on a 1, a 5, a 10, and 15 horsepower. And with our 525 series, it has Ethernet and it has embedded safety circuit. So with a lot of the other drives, well, actually with all the other drives, you have to physically purchase an Ethernet card for all of these. Some of them you have to buy more than just an Ethernet card because it's not something you can just plug in. A lot of times you have to have an adapter for that Ethernet card. But as you can see, the Ethernet card for the 04 series drives, it's almost $600 this price. This price for the 523, it's $150, $180 less. And the drives themselves are going to be less expensive. And then when you're talking replacing a PowerFlex 4 with Ethernet, I wouldn't replace a 4 with a 523. I just go right to a 525. In the long run, it's going to wind up being less. It's going to be more cost effective for you. But when putting this together, I was I'm the one that promotes these, and I was really surprised at the difference in pricing between the older drives and the newer drives. The newer drives are quite a bit less expensive. But we've gone through, what the 4s are, what the 4 is, what the 40 is, what the 40P is. Now you're going to move forward with upgrading to a 523 or a 525. Don't have the adapter plate yet because it's not out. So what do you do? It's like replacing anything else that's electrical. First thing you want to do is you want to turn off the power to that drive and lock out and tag out on the disconnect. And when you go back to the drive, you want to make sure that you got no voltage on it so that you can begin your determination. Once you have power off, you want to mark all your lining cables. You want to mark the motor out leads. You want to mark your control cables. And I'll get into a couple of other items down, a couple slides down as to, it's going to be easier to mark the control cables. But when the drives are, all the cables are disconnected, you just take the drive out from where it's mounted. Now, when you're getting the new drive ready, one of the items that you do want to make sure before you take the old drive out, if you have access to connected component software, you do want to go into your 40, and there are some non-default items that you want to download and make sure that you have, so that you can go back in when you connect your new drive, and you can match up your non-default items to the new drive. But when you're putting in the new drive, our PFlex AP011 is our PowerFlex 40 and 40P to 525 migration guide. That is the guide that you would really use for this. The 4 is going to be similar, but it's not going to be the same. But the 40 to the 525 migration guide is wonderful. I have a couple little cutouts of some of the items you can look at when you're doing this. But because you don't have that adapter plate, unfortunately, you have to measure new holes. Now, the 525 simple is you only really got to be 2 holes if it's small enough. If you get them above 50 horsepower, there are more than 2 holes. But the smaller drives, they only got 2 holes. They got top hole and bottom hole. And if it's tin mounted, there's no measurement needed. You just unhook your drive and you put your new one in. But if you have to make new holes, hopefully you'll be able to use at least one of the mounting holes from the old drive. But if you cannot, you got to punch some new holes. You got to drill them out. You got to tap them so that you have a good place to mount your drive. When you get everything tapped, you get your drive in there. You mount your new drive onto your newly tapped holes. Into place, make sure you button everything down, and then you can terminate your old cables onto your new drive. And this little picture over here on the side is going to be the 525 IO control. And if you are replacing it with a 40, there is a couple of pages before you would see this picture. There is a 40 picture showing the exact same block diagram. And it's just a matter of transposing one picture to another so that you can see where to, re-terminate your the line in cables and the T motor leads are going to be simple because they're going to be marked pretty clearly. But getting your control leads over here connected correctly is what you're going to have to look at. That's the biggest question mark that you would have in installing a new drive, is making sure that your controls are properly connected. And by using the PFlex AP011, it'll be able to help you with that. But I was telling you that this is the items that you would see. It has a termination comparison summary box, and this is only a portion of it. This is actually, I think, a page and a half long in the book. I could have copied and pasted it here, but you would not even be able to close to reading it. Also, a side-by-side input-output blocks on your terminals between your 40 and your 525. Makes it very simple to upgrade your cable, make sure it's connected to the right place, and so you have a smooth connection and upgrade. But after you get everything installed, you want to remove your locks and tags. When you turn the power on, the drive comes on. Check voltage so that if it's a 40 volt drive, you got 40 volt coming in, and you're ready for startup. And you can do the startup of the drive using the keypad. It's a lot easier to do it if you're going to use component software, connect component software. And when you go into it, you want to get the non-default parameters from your PowerFlex 4 and 40 that hopefully you've already taken. And then you're going to enter the drive or the parameters from the motor and on your FLA, your current. And in the 525, unlike the 4 and the 40, you can input your motor RPM. So if you have something less than a 1750, or so RPM motor, you can make that change here. If you're having issues with overcurrent in the 4 and the 40, it's probably because of decel times. You can change your accel and decel times at this point. And CCW also has, it's got a startup wizard, which is, it makes it really simple. Because you plug in its startup wizard, and it'll take you through everything that you need to do and all the things that you should look at to change during the startup wizard. It's a great feature, and it makes it very simple. And using the startup wizard, it will actually provide you with the means to start the drive so that you can check rotation. But if you're not using the startup wizard, you've done all your entry of your parameters, and you need to do VFD rotation. As simple as, once you're ready to go, hit the green button, and hopefully it's going to start up. If you got all your controls connected correctly, I mean, if it was working before, it should be working now. Just make sure that your drive rotation is correct. The assumption here is that it is. If you have a remote loop, 1 to 10 or a 4 to 20 milliamp control, ensure that that works at this point. And if you have it connected to a network, you can also use the PFlex AP0111 manual. It's going to be chapter 3. It's going to go everything that you need to do to make any changes for using and connecting this to a network. That's all I got, folks. If you guys got any questions, please let me know.
All right, thanks, Mike. And with that, yeah, we can open it up to any questions anyone has. I know the communications was one slide back. I know that there's a lot of older units that are out there. Some on DeviceNet, some on Ethernet. And there's definitely some mapping that has to be done if you're swapping those out. So a little bit more planning goes into the more communications of a drive. So hopefully you get to start doing that earlier than when you get to obsolescence. But either way, the 520 series is a good upgrade option for that. All right. Well, if there's no questions, we can definitely wrap it up for today. I appreciate everybody's time getting on. We'll continue to have these the different topics in Rumsey's webinar series moving into the future. We should have our current topics list posted on our website, at least out through November. So if you haven't seen that or haven't went to our website lately, we do have a bunch of new topics on there. As I said kind of in the beginning of this, we will have an email follow this so that we have all this information and a copy of the recording. And it does look like we did get one question there. And so I'm guessing, Mike, you probably can't see it. There was a question about eco mode in the PowerFlex 520 series, and what does the eco mode mean?
Oh, the economizer mode?
I believe that's the economizer mode.
What that is, that's a version of our sensorless vector that allows you better, more precise control of the motor. In layman's terms, but essentially, it's hard for me to show you. If it'd be much easier for me to show you if you were in connected component software. If you have it set to economizer mode, you have to tune the drive, and what you do is you set up the tune, and it will pulse out to the motor so that when the drive is ready to run, it will allow you it will be the most efficient that it can be. So it'll have as little losses as you can have. There's always going to be some losses when you have electricity for flowing through a motor, but economizer mode is going to allow you to use the least amount of current that you can to drive it.
Okay. If that answers your question, if not, we could definitely follow up with you and get you a little bit more information and maybe send you a specific tech note aspect around what the economizer mode is to just to give you a little bit more definition.
Of course.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Well, with that, I appreciate everybody's time. Like I said, we'll follow up and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.